We have studied the bladder and the rectum and their function of defecation and micturition. Now let us go on to the structure between them, the vagina, the uterus, the fallopian tubes, the ovary. And in the male, the testes, the epididymis, the vas deferens, the seminal vesicles, the ejaculatory duct, the contribution of the prostate, and that will create a new individual, and the process is called as reproduction. In human beings, the reproduction is bisexual. That means there must be a male and a female partner to be able to produce the child. 23 chromosomes come from the sperm, from the male, and 23 chromosomes come from the ovum, that is the female. And they become 46, which becomes the zygote, and this develops as a fetus after it's implanted into the uterus. Then it becomes independently viable, is delivered during labor, normal labor, and this baby then it grows into a full-fledged independent adult. So in this whole process, we have to study spermatogenesis, development of the ovum, the estrus or the estrogen dependent phase of the menstrual cycle, some things about the sexual act, because if that is not successful, then it will lead to infertility. Then how is there a fertilization? How does the fertilized zygote get implanted? And the ground on which it gets implanted in the endometrium of the uterus is set by the progesterone, which is secreted by the remaining nurse cells of the ovum. And this secretes progesterone so that implantation can occur. Then the corpus luteum degenerates and its function of secreting progesterone is taken over by the placenta. If there is no fertilization and implantation, estrogen and progesterone decrease at the end of the menstrual cycle, and the entire endometrium is lost in form of menstruation. So after implantation, we should study fetal development and birth, because this would give rise to a huge number of MCQs in your NEET exam. Let us start talking about spermatogenesis first. So this is a section of the testes. This is the section of the testes. And you are seeing these convoluted tubules in these testes, which ultimately would end in the epididymis, which will convert into vas deferens. The testes is surrounded by a fluid-filled synovial sheath, which is called as tunica vaginalis, and is held to the base of the scrotum by the round ligament or by a ligamentous structure or fibrous structure. Now, if we enlarge this tube, at the periphery of these tubes, you would see spermatogonia, which have 2X chromosomes. Now, first they undergo mitosis. Mitosis means that they still retain. So instead of the one cell, they become two cells, but they still retain the 2X in both the cells. So these cells are 2X. And this is also 2X. Then they undergo meiosis, which is a reduction division. And thus, from a single spermatogonia, there are 4 spermatids which are formed. Now these spermatids undergo a transformation and they become sperms. Now the sperm has got a head which contains the uh, chromosomal material, that 1x, half the chromosomes, 23 chromosomes. Then it has got a mitochondria, which is the energy storing area. And finally, it has got a long tail by which keeps on rotating and propelling the sperm forward. So this is the formation of the sperm. Now this vas deferens arising from the testes would grow through the superficial inguinal ring into the inguinal canal, then go into the through the deep inguinal ring into the abdomen. Now here, when it comes through the deep inguinal ring into the abdomen, it crosses the ureter. It crosses the ureter, and it pierces the prostate, dividing it into a lower posterior lobe and a median lobe above it. And then it combines with the duct from the seminal vesicle, which becomes the ejaculatory duct. And the ejaculatory duct of both sides open into the prostatic urethra. So the prostate has an anterior lobe, a median lobe, a posterior lobe, and 2 lateral lobes. So that's what is the formation of the prostate. And this is the vas deferens crossing the ureter, piercing the prostate, dividing it into a posterior and a median lobe, having a sac-like structure which stores the spermatic fluid, which is called a seminal vesicle, and both open through the ejaculatory duct into the prostatic urethra. Now this, you are seeing the section of the prostatic urethra. These are the 2 lateral lobes of the prostate. And here is the projection of the median lobe. This is the posterior urethric crest, which ends into a roundish structure which is called as verumontanum. Now this verumontanum has an H-type slit from the both ejaculatory ducts, and it has small openings which are prostatic openings, which will release the prostatic fluid, which will cause the sperms to become active. Now this prostatic urethra ends into a membranous urethra in the deep perineal pouch, where there is the external sphincter supplied by the pudendal nerve, and then into the perineal urethra, membranous urethra, perineal urethra, which has become horizontal and will become penile urethra. Now this urethra is surrounded by a fibrocartilaginous fibrous structure which is called as corpora spongiosa. So this is the urethra surrounded by corpora spongiosa, which is muscular in the outside, and this muscle sort of propels the spermatic fluid through the penis into the vagina. So this is the male reproductive system. It is like the head of a buffalo, and the horns which you see here, these are the horns, they are called as the fallopian tubes. They end near the ovary, and the ovary is connected to the pelvic wall by the ovarian ligament. This is the ovarian ligament, and is connected by the round ligament, which is lying in this space. It goes like this, then goes into the anti-abdominal wall, the deep inguinal ring, the superficial inguinal ring, and it ends in the representation of the scrotal skin in the female, which is the labia majora. This is the broad ligament. So if we are viewing the uterus from the side, so this is the uterus and this is the cervix and this is the vagina, and here are the fallopian tubes which are near the ovaries. Then this ligament comes like this. This is a peritoneal reflection. It covers the fallopian tube and goes onto the rectum. It comes from the bladder, makes a ligamentous fold like this, which is the broad ligament. And the uterine artery would enter this broad ligaments here and will go up and then to the fallopian tube. Ovarian artery is it anastomoses with the ovarian artery, or the ovary is supplied by a separate ovarian artery. So this, what you see, is the uterine artery going into the fold of the broad ligament and there ending in the fallopian tube. The ovary has its own supply. Now, what should happen for the ovary consists of fixed number of ovums, and exactly parallel to it, the ovums have 23 chromosomes. That means they have undergone meiosis, and before meiosis there has been mitosis. So from the oogonia, like the spermatogonia, you have now ovum. Now this ovum is surrounded by nurse cells. These are nurse cells, and they secrete a hormone called estrogen. So what happens is that this one of the ovum starts growing, one of the oogonia starts growing, divides into 4, and then ultimately at the end of 14 days of the menstrual cycle you have a ovum. Now this ovum would rupture from the surface of the ovary and will enter the fallopian tube. Will enter this fallopian tube. So here is that ovum which has been sucked by the fallopian tube and is gradually traveling towards the uterus. On the other hand, deposited in the vagina by the bisexual act are these sperms being propelled forwards into the cavity of the uterus and going towards the ovum. So one of the sperm pierces the ovum, 23 male and 23 female, male and female chromosomes become 46. So this is the male pronucleus and this is the female pronucleus. Their membrane is lost and these chromosomes arrange like this, and by the astral rays from the Golgi apparatus of the cell, these are pulled apart and they become 46 chromosomes. So now from the ovum, by the fusion of the sperm and the ovum, you have a zygote. You now have a zygote which starts multiplying. So from 1 cell to 2 cell to 4 cells. And what is waiting for this is the endometrium of the uterus. This endometrium has been prepared by the estrogen so that this zygote, as it travels down, it gets implanted in the endometrium, prepared endometrium by the estrogen. Now the nurse cells without the ovum convert into a structure which is called as corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum starts secreting the progesterone, and this progesterone maintains the endometrium in a stage so that the implantation continues. Implantation is protected. After 14 days, the corpus luteum would be lost, but the implanted zygote, implanted new individual or zygote, there will be a placenta developing from it, and this placenta will continue to secrete progesterone and maintain the implantation. So, if this mechanism fails, then both estrogen and progesterone decrease. Estrogen and progesterone decrease. The endometrium can no longer be maintained, and the endometrium is thrown out through the vagina in an act which is called as menstruation. So this is the female reproductive system. And now we have reached a stage where we'll start studying the changes in the implanted zygote and how they develop into a child. When does the child become viable for separate existence? And then we can go and study labor. So this much